Hi. I was in the middle of a meditation. It's really early in the morning right now, and I just felt really guided to share with you quite a bit of insights that I had. I was thinking about one thing that's being talked about in certain communities is something that I usually wouldn't talk about, but it's that there are a lot of remote viewers who are people who go deep and can see certain things that are coming in the future. And when many remote viewers in different areas start seeing the same thing, they see it as pretty legit and something that you can plan on. And one of the things that the remote viewers were talking about is a big um, catastrophic event that would happen in the winter in the northern hemisphere. And I want to talk about what timelines are because I think this is a much bigger thing than that potential event. I want you to picture that in the 1950s and 60s, humanity lived on one floor of a building and didn't understand there were other floors. In that timeline, imagine that this floor is just a timeline. Imagine that this floor is just one linear thing. And so, like in 1950, you can see all the way across the floor. You can see 1951, you can see 1952. It's a linear timeline. And so people can do things circumstantially for long periods of time. In fact, there's a reason now that there's people from that time that have been married 50, 60, 70 years. Back then, the highest thing we knew was our circumstances in that floor. We didn't know anything different, and life was just get your circumstances how we want it. Don't go within that much. Don't feel through emotions. Don't process things that are in the body. And we would hear different stories about people's grandpas and like older people that was like, yeah, we've been together 50 years, but you also realize they don't talk about anything, or there's some giant bad alcoholic secret about the person. In other words, there wasn't any looking inside at the emotions. There wasn't any inner work, not nearly on the level that there is now. And then imagine maybe around 2012, the beginning of an elevator, and the elevator starting to reveal to you that there's different floors, that there's higher floors. And you start to see something, but then also you let go, and then you start to see a new floor and you start to see a new timeline. And more as we do this work, we are on an elevator, and the elevator is looking down floors, but you start to understand that we'll be past that floor in a second. I believe that in 2020, the elevator has sped up tremendously, and more, you'll notice that it's very hard for you to keep something circumstantially going. It's harder to keep a relationship going in certain ways unless you're both in an amazing level of surrender and doing inner work together. It's harder to like decide that you're going to do something as a new career and then be sure that's what you're going to do 6 months later. Why is that? Because you had a timeline that go, maybe that's the answer, but you're on an elevator and it's passing that floor. So when I hear predictions about things coming in the winter, I'm thinking, yeah, but these predictions are made like August and September, and that floor is going to be long gone. I'm not saying there isn't any validity to the predictions, but I am saying that, first of all, bringing any prediction to light or seeing things through meditation, seeing things in your own life can transcend them. It's happened for me several times that I've had moments where my deepest fears showed up in meditation or on ayahuasca journeys. And I feel that in seeing them, I started the process of transcending them. And I've noticed that things that came close to those happening started happening, but they didn't. And it was almost as if because I saw them, it brought them to light, and things outside suddenly couldn't happen because I already saw it. So the fact that these remote viewers are all seeing it and bringing it out a lot makes me feel like we're already we're on the elevator and we're passing the floor that sees those predictions, but by the time winter comes, we're going to be 50 floors away. So I'm not too worried about what's on that floor. In fact, this morning I had this idea for this video, and I noticed that I couldn't even think about what I was going to say. It was almost like just let go, because the elevator is a letting go, right? The elevator is a surrender. You're letting life take you. And you'll notice things that you're worried about in 2 months from now in your own personal life or whatever. If you think about how things have been lately, you know that life's going to be totally different by then, right? Because we're getting more and more aware. And our awareness is caused by us seeing both what's going on outside and what's going on inside. The more we see what's going on inside, the faster the elevator goes. And the other way around, the faster the elevator goes, the more that we are able to see what's going on inside. Now, one of the biggest reasons people suffer is they insist that they're a floor. There are a lot of people that think who I am is my past accomplishments or my past problems, and I'm identified with a floor. But the elevator is taking you up. Now, if the elevator is taking you up and you're identified with a floor, you're going to have to do many addictive things. You're going to have to get drunk or do drugs or whatever, or look for any realm of happiness in the 3D world, because you're so unhappy because your floor that you think you are is falling apart. But you have to understand that the truth of what you are is you're the elevator. And the elevator is moving faster and faster and faster. You'll notice right now, feelings you have now, you will not feel in 24 hours from now. You could probably even say 5 hours from now. If you dwell on the floor that the feelings are about, that can continue, but the elevator is always trying to move you through. And if you're on a ride at a park, you start to understand, oh, okay, I'm just seeing this and it's passing. I just see this and it's passing. What life needs you to do is see what it's trying to show you. So if you see something, you can alchemize it and stop it from happening on the external. So if you see something that you're worried about, I want to offer you to get present for it, be with it, notice what you feel, cry out the thing, and you'll move forward, right? If you are really honest with yourself, you can get very present right now and you can lose the patterns that you've also had that were on different floors. Like you might have a pattern that's codependent or a fixer, and that might be a floor too. That might have been an action you created to prevent things inside of you from coming to light. But remember, you're just a floor, and know that the biggest way to change everything is to see what's inside. The act of seeing what's inside is the alchemizing in itself. There's a thing called the observer effect, where they've discovered that when something is observed, it understands that it's observed, and that actually changes the whole thing. This is why you could go inside or you could have a new perspective and start to cry, right? Like, what is that when you start to realize they were loving me the whole time, or I understand their perspective, or I see why I'm this way. And then you start to cry. What is that release? That release is you actually seeing something that was lodged in your body in a new light and understanding something new from seeing it. When you see it, all of a sudden it goes, thank you. Now we can release it. And suddenly that thing that it released is no longer in your reality and it's no longer true. That was a floor that you passed. And in this time, we're grieving like crazy. We're either losing someone, we're losing other people that we love, we're losing identities, we're losing relationships, and a part of ourselves that we used to be that we aren't anymore is trying to die too. Our job is to really get present into surrender and let what we're not die, because we often get identified with the thing that's trying to die. And my dare to you is understand that anything that you can see isn't you, right? So there might be something you're really identified with. Like, I'm always a procrastinator. I'm always a worrier. I'm always in relationships. I'm always alone. Whatever it is, that I'm always thing that you see and can say can't be you. Remember, you're the observer. You're no pattern that you can see. So, the act of understanding that these things aren't you and getting present and listening and meditating can change the things, which also changes realities. There's also things that we're worried about in the future that could happen outside of us, that if we meditate and listen, or we stop distracting ourselves with our phones, which is just like a bunch of floors going, come here. And you're like, no, I'm the elevator. And it's like, no, you're a floor. You're a small story. Stay entertained at the level of the floor. And you're like, no, I'm the elevator. These things are distracting us and keeping us on a floor, but the elevator's still moving, right? So when you let go and listen, you meditate, you go for walks in nature, you don't grab onto old stories, you stop being identified with this. This transcends it. And when you hear things that you're worried about could happen a couple months out, you still need to feel through that, because this has to be experienced. The reason it has to be experienced is it's already stored inside of your realm. It's already stored inside of your body. So we can transcend the world by fully feeling through everything we're worried about internally. And if we don't, and we deny it, and we have a bunch of addictions to cover it up, life will make us experience it externally. So whatever your biggest fear is, you have to feel through and transcend. If you have a giant fear of going broke, being abandoned, unloved, being alone, whatever it is, whatever your biggest fear is, you have to experience it. Now, you can experience it internally. You can actually face it and see it through light and transcend it. But have you noticed that everything you're worried about, whether it's in a relationship or a job or whatever, you seem to manifest? You might have a fear of dating someone who would abandon you. So, what do? You find someone who would abandon you, and then you try to change them, but you can't. The ego can't change someone like that. So what happens? They end up abandoning you. So you finally can feel through what your biggest fear is, right? So whatever your biggest fear is right now, we can either try to control the world and keep it from coming to light inside, and it'll just get worse and worse. Or we can surrender. And whatever your biggest fear is, you can fully feel through that fear, whether it's external or internal. But right now, what the shift is from 3D to 5D is the shift from being identified as a floor to understanding you're the elevator. This makes life hard to predict, but it'll make it more and more and more amazing, because you have all kinds of patterns in your body that are ready to be healed and alchemized. And the good news and the bad news, but really this overall is good news, is the elevator will always be moving now for the rest of your life. And it will be moving faster and faster and faster. Every time we alchemize something and feel really good, we go, what was that? And we start getting more and more and more introverted and doing more and more inner work to understand what lies exist in our body. This is so exciting, right? Now, if you have aspects of control still buried in your body, this is horrifying, because you want to keep everything together and you're the floor. Well, we don't want to keep everything together, because you're keeping together is keeping all the things you're worried about or identified falsely as in your body. We don't want that. That's a billion suitcases that you're holding on to. And life is going to pull those things out whether you want it or not. And it will pull it out by making it happen, or pull it out by making you face it. So the aspects of control are dying in this time, and we're moving to a time of surrender. And in surrender, life is very not predictable, but you might experience, like in August, something that could happen in December, but you're on an elevator. It's going to be way past that. So everything that you experience as a fear must be fully felt. And you don't have to stay in a bad frequency to feel it. In fact, you can feel it through a place of love. But inside of you are a bunch of protective, at different ages, inner children from different ages in your life and different traumatic experiences that need you to feel through it. This can be the transcending of shame and guilt and fear, and bring more and more and more light to the world. And anyone that has any dark, controlling, secret agenda cannot pull it off in a world of light. Remember, the two things people with dark secret agenda needs is secrecy, us not seeing it, which that's already done, and time. They need a floor. They need to be like, here's the plan next year, everybody that's bad with us. And then they have to, but we're on an elevator. And it's like, okay, thanks for messing with floor two. I'm already on floor 50. Now I'm on floor 60. So really take in the idea that you're moving timelines, and we're moving timelines faster and faster and faster. The reason is a timeline isn't the truth. A timeline's not the truth. The truth is not that we are a small separate self with a linear timeline that has a plan this way. We're moving into more and more and more the truth of what we are. And as we let go of the old physical identification of a story, we move into magic and we discover that we're, as the elevator, much more connected to source, much more able to see and move in a magical way, that there's much more healing here, that there's much more love here, that there's much less control, and things are moving into a world of miracles. The thing that we have to do, though, is allow that. Allow the relationship that doesn't work to fall apart. This is so important. Allow the job that isn't calling to your soul to fall apart. Allow your fear of losing money to be seen and alchemized, and understand that your vibration and your participating with the elevator is worth much more than money. We have to leave the world of fear based survival and move into the truth of what we are, this expansive, magical, free elevator. Remember, our job in this time is to surrender into a place of love and allowing. And when you're in a meditation or when you're being and you see something scary that could happen, feel through it now so that it doesn't. Be with it now, be here now. Take a deep breath in, release it. Be present now. And when you feel something that's scary, instead of trying to change the circumstances so this thing doesn't have to feel felt, let it be felt. Because once it's felt, it's seen. And once it's seen, it leaves. And once it leaves, you have less suitcases in your life and you're lighter. And the lighter you are, the faster the elevator moves. So we're done being identified with our past story or our future story, because right now it's not predictable. If it's seen, if you're in August seeing something in December, trust me, you're going to alchemize a lot of things, and we're going to let go of the heavy weight and the identity that says that who I am is the small separate self who's just supposed to get a circumstance good and then live in that one circumstance for the next 50 years. It's just insane. You're an infinite magical being. It's so funny to think of me identifying with myself as a stand-up comic, which I haven't done since 2012, right? Or old movies that I did 20 years ago. I'm just now. I'm not my old story. I'm not just my parents' kid. I'm not any of that. I'm an infinite being and I'm more and more and more light and I'm higher and higher consciousness. And so are you. The question is, are you participating with it, or are you arguing with it? Are you fighting to be a floor, or are you surrendering to be an elevator that moves faster and faster and faster and can bring absolute infinite healing to the world and help everyone else feel their permission to move onto their elevator and stop being identified with some giant accomplishment from their past or some giant problem with their past or some future based solution that's just an escape from feeling what's here right now. What's here right now needs to be seen. And you're magic and you're loved and we're infinite beings. And that's what a timeline is. And that's why our job is to stop being obsessed with an old timeline and know that we're changing them faster and faster. And we're magic. You're magic. But you have to surrender all the stories that prove that you're not. You have to release any baggage that's no longer you, or let it be released, because you're infinite. You're free. Love you. See you at God's Kid in November.